So I guess what I'll do is I'll start with a summary of the findings because it's quite a long video. So just to help you understand what you're going to be looking at. So first I had to take the colonies out of the yards and then transport them to my house. But the 3 colonies in question had queens that either got reared or introduced in August. In the Yukon, August is actually fall, so it was a really late introduction. And chances are, or I guess I'm pretty much 100% sure, there wasn't enough bee cycles, so 21-day cycles, to produce enough winter bees. I did put resource frames from other colonies, but the actual queens probably just raised a couple of cycle, or maybe one and a half cycles of bees, so not enough bees. So you'll notice that there's quite a few bees on the bottom board on the first colony that I look at and the third colony that I look at. There's a good chance that most of those bees are summer bees, and because the final cluster in all 3 situations, you'll see, is just a little softball size or even hardball size cluster, so way too small. They did start out a decent size. The challenge up here is we were hit with really cold temperatures in November. So I think our first close to -40 was in November. And then we did get about a week and a half to 3 weeks of below -30. I think the lowest low was -48. So, but we did have fluctuating temperatures here and there. And I think it was the first one that I go through, you'll notice that the cluster got split and a bunch of bees died in the front of the colony, and then the final cluster died at the back of the colony. So if you get a 30-degree temperature fluctuation, the colony, regardless of setup, will get surprised. So that's that. The first one, I actually did a mite wash on some of the dead bees, and there's quite a few mites in there. So chances are, but one of the contributing causes. So my assessment, I would say, is first is late queen. So up here, we need to requeen by mid-July at the latest, to have the queen producing and raising bees, and then supplementing pollen patties into August to make sure that there's no dearth and the bees are getting the nutrition they need while they're being raised from egg to hatching. Number 2 cause, there was plenty of stores in there, so that was fine. Was likely the number of bees was too low, I'd say, and then it's the number of winter bees. Okay, so up north, it's all a factor, or it's all about the age of those winter bees. And if, for example, my winter bees are being raised in August, then it makes for really old bees. So, and then throw in temperature fluctuations, and then throw in some mite loads, and then you get into problems. So yeah, and then so the second colony I inspected was a tiny colony. Literally, that one there was a merge of 2 colonies. So that one there, you'll see that there was just not enough bees. Plenty of honeys. The frames, just probably that box there still weighed about 70 pounds. It hurt my back actually. So plenty of honey in all 3 colonies. And then the last one I inspected, you'll notice I called 4 frames. One's off video, but I just didn't bother. I just called those frames that had previous chalk brood. Again, the bottom board had quite a few dead bees, but that's attrition, that's winter attrition, so those are the bees that are dying throughout the winter. If you follow the Nosema amoeba disease colony videos or stuff that I've been putting out, so that colony there, you'll notice the attrition, the bees are dying outside of the colony. Okay, there'll be some dead bees on the bottom board, but a lot of them are just flying out. They're sick and they'll die outside and then they die out front of the colony. Versus typical winter attrition is they'll burn off or die off the cluster and then they just fall off the cluster and then they drop on the bottom board. So that's winter burnout. And sickness, typically, because all three boxes has very little feces on the frames, so it tells me their guts were fine, they didn't overconsume, and it was likely, like I said, just a matter of age and poor winter breed numbers. And because I've had really high mite load colonies survive winters, and as long as there's plenty of healthy winter bees, they do fine. But if you throw in a summer bee with some mites with poor fat body reserves, they'll just not be able to properly thermoregulate. So that colony that got split up it's evidence that the cluster wasn't able to adjust or thermoregulate effectively, and it got broken up. And basically, as the cluster gets smaller, there's too much empty space around the cluster, so the cold, and then it gets worse and worse and worse. They get higher and higher cold exposures. They have to produce more heat, higher surface area exposed to the cold per bee, so then it just dwindles and collapses. So in a nutshell, you need to make sure you have the right number of winter bees. Don't wait too long to requeen, especially depending on your location. Just make sure you know when your fall is, and don't requeen in fall, especially if you do get cold temperatures. And when I say cold, anything from minus 20 to minus 40. So prairies, a lot of places in Canada. In the US, less or so, but northern Minnesota, those types of places, you will get those temperatures. So it's important that, again, it's all about winter bees. So hopefully the video, it's kind of boring. I apologize for it, but I did cut out a lot of the knickknacks, but you'll see deadouts. It's about the cleanup. And while you're cleaning up, you might as well smell the frames, look at the frames, scrape the frames, clean the frames, and make a decision. Do you keep the frame or do you chuck it? And like I said in the video, keeping frames or getting rid of frames is actually really quite hard to do, especially in the first couple of years or first 5 years of beekeeping. But in the long run, it's better to cycle through and have some fresher wax in your colonies, especially if you see signs of gut diseases and lots of feces, nosema, and that type of stuff. It's good to keep some healthy frames going. So anyways, enjoy and ask questions as much as you want. Two dead colonies. So here's the base. Actually, these two had, the one on the outside had a closed bottom board, and I can't see for sure, but you can see how the enclosure here is set up, or the crawl space. It's a bit of ice down there, but nothing much. I'm just gonna plug this side here to prevent any drafts, and protect that colony on the right hand side. But yeah, this second one that I took out, this is the one that had chalk brood. It was a late season queen rear, local queen. It's a long story, but I guess the chalk brood originally came from a nook that I took on from somebody a couple years ago, and since that time I've pretty much localized the bees in this box, but pretty much this year will be a cleanse old frames year. So most of the frames in these two boxes, regardless of how good they look, will get melted down into wax. Both boxes were heavy, so I'm going to do an autopsy on both of these. But my guess is probably small cluster, not enough bees, which was expected. They were both longshots about getting through winter, and I wasn't pining on having them survive. But I've had the occasional, I guess, really small colony make it over winter. So nothing wasted. The bees were theirs, the queen were there. But yeah, any brood diseases need to be managed properly. So this year I'm going to cleanse all the frames out of these ones. I'm going to do a lot of resource colonies using 5-frame nooks, doubling them up because they tend to be the best size to draw out new comb. So that's the goal. And I've got, I'll be splitting this colony, still really strong. They didn't like me manhandling the colonies beside. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to take the styrofoam here, put it on the side for now, plug this hole with more of the styrofoam lying around, and yeah, it's still not a very nice day today, but yeah, somebody's firewood for next year, and it's probably close to zero right now, snowing, dark gray day. Hopefully spring shows up. We've had 2 years now of was it close to 200% more snow than normal, and I'd say prior to the last 2-3 years, most of the snow would be gone. Still cold, but because of the low snowfall during winter here typically, it would already be melted. So pollen is still usually late April, early May. So you can see down by the spruce trees there's some willows out front. The pussy willows are starting to pop out, but I'd say it's probably still another 2 weeks away from producing pollen. And yeah, this yard here is mostly, this meadow here and the meadows around are full of dandelions, and it's surrounded by willows. And so, and then main nectar flow here is from mid to early June to early July, and it's a mix of dandelion, willow, honey, and some native flowers on the, I guess, the mountain banks over there. So yeah, quick update. I'm gonna go get the other colony from the other yard, and then I'll if it's I'll put these on my deck, and then I'll be able to go through one by one and have a look at what really happened. Cheers. Time to load up the truck. Okay, so I'm just gonna do a quick check on these colonies. You'll notice a coincidence, maybe not. All 3 dead colonies here are in license boxes, And all the live colonies are in paradise bee boxes. I actually don't much like these yellow boxes because I've had more winter failures with them, and also there's too many widgets and things on them to make things a bit more confusing. But so this one here is the one that was in my home yard, and these two here were in my out yard, and these were the two experiment colonies. So this one over here had issues with chalk brood pretty much the whole season, and it's got a young queen that I bred, but I guess it didn't make it. And then this one here is the one I merged two weak colonies together to see if they would make it through the winter. So these two here I didn't expect them to make, but I was hoping I might get lucky. And this one here I thought would make it, but yep, things die. So all three are heavy, so I had to carry them here, so they were actually quite heavy. So doesn't look like it was a starvation issue, probably just a So you'll notice a lot of moldy bees. They've been dead for a while, so you'll notice I've got an empty Rubbermaid with a lid here, and that's just so I can put all these dead bees in there and not risk contaminating the live colonies. And then I'll just bring that directly to the dump. Yeah. So first thing I notice is really small cluster over here. You can see the top of it was here. I'll scrape some of those bees off, see if I can see the queen there, but that just tells me that typically you want a larger size cluster. So this was a late requeen, and yeah, I'm not too worried about these frames being too contaminated, but I'll scrape the wax off and burn off any feces or things. So I'll probably keep these frames, but the other ones I'm really gonna question. But it looks like there's some old frames in here, so I'll go have a look. So still some capped honey on there. Not much, but out of frame. We'll see what the rest looks like. So I'm not sure if you can see, but if you look down there, it's a bunch of dead bees. There's a clump of them. It looks like the cluster may have been gotten separated, and then these bees, it looks like they just died in the bottom there. So it looks like I guess that's the thing, when it drops to -40 overnight, after being in the mid minus teens, and it drops to -40, 45, it is quite drastic. Yeah, so I'll keep looking. You can see how I torched my follow boards, and it helps protect the boards against mold. You can see some propolis here on the side. So yeah, it keeps them nice and clean. It's I guess it's a Japanese way of preserving wood. This is probably one frame I'm gonna get rid of. It's one of my old ones, really dark. Still some honey on it. It's not too moldy, but I think it's time for it to go. Yeah, still uncapped honey there, but frame's about I don't know, 8 pounds. So, but it does look like the cluster got separated somehow, and some of the bees likely froze. Some of them are hungry because the cluster is so small. Their butts are in there, but it's because the cluster is so small. Probably during one of those cold spells in February is when it died. So it just couldn't keep itself warm. So yeah, again, the front of the bottom frame here, this lower area, so you can see how there's a clump of dead bees here. So I have a feeling the queen went one way and a bunch of bees went another way. So because they're completely separate, and the bottom board has some bees. I'll pull that thing off there, but yeah, the dirty business. That's why I'd rather have my colony survive than have to go do this every year. So the reason I started with this one is I know this one doesn't have any diseases. Nothing to do but to just clean them up. Okay, I went to grab my my mite wash kit, homemade peanut butter. Use the hot gun to weld it together and put a screen there. So I'll just do a quick wash on some of these bees. Just need about a half cup should be enough, and then I can just wash them. So you can see all the mites floating on top there. They do concentrate into, I guess, into all the bottom bees, the dead bees there, but that's probably a bit too many mites. They did get OAV, but like I've said, OAV is no longer effective. Hence the reason I'm starting to use Formic Pro, because you get a better, I guess, you start hitting them under the cappings, so not many sinkers, but you can see there's some mites floating on top there, so yeah. And then you just scrape them in a container. And what I'll do is I'll use bleach solution to clean these bottom boards out, the equipment, just to disinfect it. And then a bit of sunshine should be enough. Here's one colony. It did have mites, so mites were likely a contributing factor, and likely, I guess I'm not sure about the health of those bees there. There's some old ones in there, so it happens. This one should be a quick one. It's the merge colony. So, yep. Let's see what it looks like. You can see how the bees died on the pretty much they died at the top of the colony here. Let's see what it looks like underneath. So they died right below the fondant. Full frame honey, so they weren't shy on stores. Crystallized honey in the cells here, so they'll probably, that might be the sugar concentration was too concentrated. But let's see what it looks like. So you can see how it's all crystallized, so hard for them to digest that. There wasn't much to this one. Again, not many dead bees. And this was a small cluster. No surprises. Okay, so this is my last deadout to check. And let's have a look. So I'm guessing probably a combination of mites, probably chalk brood and small cluster. So we'll see what it looks like. Again, the fondant, they ate some kind of liquid. Is it good or bad to add at the start of the winter? Probably bad, so I'll probably just add them during the late winter, early spring, and because these boxes are full of honey, so there's actually no need for this. Probably kept them active too long. There we go. You can see the small cluster. Not enough bees. Again, this was a young queen. It looked like there were a lot of bees. I'll check the bottom board, but chances are most of the bees were summer bees, and just not enough winter bees to tough the winter. And you can see most of the frames are empty. You got this little ball in the middle there, so number of bees seems to be the issue. Probably the 4 center frames I'm going to scrap, because those are the ones that were brood frames, and the ones that there's probably brood, was it chalk brood mummies mixed in the bottom there, because I know towards the end of the summer there I could see chalk brood mummies on this one, so I'm not going to mess around. I'm going to get rid of those 4 center frames. You can actually see over here, last season I put some X's on the contaminated frames there, so for sure those two are gone. And I'll inspect the other ones for signs. So again, moldy bees. Nothing too crazy on this one. So I'm gonna touch those center frames last. I'm gonna go from either side, just so my tool doesn't get contaminated. And you can see there's some clear liquid there. They did consume the metal there, and the reason I smell them is to have an idea if the syrup in them has fermented or not. If it fermented, then I'll just scrape it off and get the wax out. So there's no evidence of poop in the cells. Not poop, but I guess those mite droppings are little white things. There's a bit of crystallized honey in there. It does have a little smell to it, but it might just be the hive alive. A few more bees on this side, but very minor. Not many dead bees. No sign of any real starving there. A couple with their butts in, but nothing major. So one thing you do notice is so this frame was like this. So the front of the frame here, you can see how the cluster was here. So they polished this off. The back side here is full of honey, but the front here has been cleaned out. You can see there's bees with their butts in, so once the cluster gets small, some bees starved. Yeah. Again, that same pattern. They've eaten the top here, but haven't gone down to the bottom. So, like I said, a small cluster. It has difficulty moving around at extreme temperatures, so regardless of having honey in the box or not, or it being insulated, cold is cold, so just couldn't move. Again, it's split here, honey here, no honey here. So this is one of my my X frames that I marked. I'm not even gonna take a chance. I'm just gonna put it in the box here, and then I'll just throw it out. No point using this wax. Same thing here. I'd love to keep them, but no point taking any chances. Getting rid of frames is the hardest thing to do, but you got to learn to do it. But this one's been whatchamacallit, scorched, so a lot of the black here, there's a bit of mold on the side here, but it's not too bad. I'll let it dry in the sun, and then I can deal with it.